The Unlikely Killer, the Bernie Tiede story. In the quiet East Texas town of Carthage, population under 7,000, Bernie Tiede was a man beloved by almost everyone. He wasn't a hometown native, but over the years, he'd become something even more cherished, a civic gem. As an assistant funeral director at the local funeral home, Bernie had a comforting presence. He helped grieving families with grace, sang beautifully at services, organized community events, and even gave life advice to the lonely and elderly. Bernie lived modestly and gave generously. He donated to the church, supported arts programs, and made people feel seen. So when he grew close to Marjorie Nugent, the wealthiest and most reviled widow in town, people assumed it was Bernie doing what he always did, offering kindness where others wouldn't. Marjorie, by all accounts, was deeply unpleasant. Her late husband had been a successful oil man, and she inherited his fortune. But wealth hadn't made her generous. She was estranged from her son and known for her bitter demeanor. Yet Bernie, ever patient, cracked her icy shell. He became her travel companion, personal assistant, and eventually her closest, perhaps only, friend. They traveled to Europe together, dined lavishly, and spent much of their time enclosed in a bubble of privilege and luxury. Bernie was rewarded handsomely, with gifts, access to her estate, and financial authority. But over time, that relationship transformed into something more toxic. Behind closed doors, Marjorie became controlling. She monitored Bernie's whereabouts, dictated his schedule, and isolated him from the rest of the town. For someone who thrived on connection and community, Bernie began to wilt. The cheerful man people had known seemed to grow increasingly withdrawn. He was still doting in public, but inside, resentment and helplessness festered. Then, in 1996, Bernie snapped. One afternoon, he walked into Marjorie's garage while she was sorting paperwork. Without warning, he picked up a .22 caliber rifle and shot her in the back 4 times. She died instantly. Instead of calling the police, Bernie hid her body in her deep freezer, tucked beneath boxes of frozen food. And then, in a surreal twist, he carried on as though nothing had happened. For months, Bernie maintained the illusion that Marjorie was still alive. He told neighbors she was ill, or traveling, or didn't want to be disturbed. He continued managing her finances, donating generously to local causes, and endearing himself further to the community. It wasn't out of greed, he claimed. It was out of guilt and a desire to use her wealth for good. 9 months passed before someone grew suspicious, Marjorie's estranged son. After repeated failed attempts to contact her, he demanded a welfare check. Police searched the house and found her body curled in the freezer, frozen in time. Bernie confessed quickly. The town, however, didn't turn on him. In fact, many defended him. They viewed Bernie not as a villain, but as a victim of manipulation, emotional abuse, and psychological entrapment. Some even suggested Marjorie had driven him to insanity. When the trial moved forward, it was relocated to another county because the defense argued credibly that Bernie couldn't get a fair trial in Carthage, not because people hated him, but because they adored him. In 1999, Bernie was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. But the story didn't end there. Years later, the case drew new attention thanks to a 2011 film titled Bernie, starring Jack Black. The film, based on a Texas Monthly article, reignited public interest and led to a re-examination of Bernie's mental health. In 2014, after revelations that he may have suffered from severe psychological trauma, a judge released him on bail under strict conditions. But in 2016, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals overturned his temporary release. He was resentenced to 99 years. Things are happening, you never know it until you are told.